Up, up, down, down, left, right, A, B. Congratulations, you have unlocked the next episode of Convince Me. Welcome in, everybody. This is finally episode 39 of Convince Me. I am Andy Rutherford, joined as always by Mr. Brian Bennett. And no, you have not unlocked big head mode. That is everyday Casey Elrod. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Leave it up to Rutt to have cheat codes on this show.
You know, when you said up, down, left, right, for a minute, I thought we were doing some Dance Dance Revolution, and I was not prepared for that. I do not have any shoes on.
Wait, that's number 4 on my list today. Oh, dadgummit, y'all stole my thunder. Can't believe that. I can't have nothing on this show.
Well. Welcome in, everybody. If you can't tell from the hints, we're talking video games this week. But before we get into that, but even before we get into the show, we do want to give an apology that this show is coming out a day late. Podcast and YouTube form will be dropping. If you're hearing this what day it drops, it should be Thursday. We're recording on the day it typically drops. And of course, there was no Facebook preview this week. Things come up. Elrod's job got in the way, which we understand, and I don't blame him for that. I blame you all the listeners. I need you to go to anchor.fm/convince me show and go to listener support. And if enough of you give enough money, this can be our job, and this sort of thing will not happen anymore going forward. Again, anchor.fm/convince me show, listener support button. Just a thought. But it is our weekly shield this week. Make sure you're following us on all of our social medias. Probably our most active will be Facebook, facebook.com/convince me show every week, except for this week. You get a preview over there of every week's show, a short, usually the first, fourth of the show, fifth of the show. You find that over on Facebook. On Twitter, we can be found at Convince Me Show. Occasionally, we will put a poll up and let our listeners decide our topic for that week, and that will be found over on Twitter. We can be found on Instagram, Convince Me Show, or Convince Me Show over there as well. Make sure you're following us there. And, of course, YouTube every week. The episode drops in its entirety in video format, tinyurl.com/convince me show. Now that all that's out of the way, let's get into the meat of the matter. Gentlemen, we have decided to do another draft style show. I think this is something we enjoy. I think it's something you, the people, enjoy. I have a feeling we'll probably be doing more of these.
Question: do you want me to draft video games tonight in the mystique and motif of Mel Cowper Jr. like I did the Christmas movies?
You do it any way you want to. You'll still probably lose, but that's beside the point. What we're doing tonight, we're talking video games, and we're going to see. I will be your mediator, your moderator tonight, and Mr. Bennett and Mr. Elrod will be drafting teams of 5 video games. It will be a snake-style draft, much like you would have in a fantasy football draft. Whereas whoever goes first in the first round will go second in the second round, and vice versa, and they will alternate all the way through till each team has 5 picks. At the end of those 5 picks, I will look at the total of each person's team of video games, and ultimately it comes down to who I think has drafted the better collection of video games. And there's nothing off limit here, folks. We're going all the way back till current day, from Atari to Xbox, from arcade cabinets to mobile phones. Nothing's off the table here. Video games of all forms are on the table for this draft. So to get started, gentlemen, do you have your pen and paper ready?
Do it.
Yeah.
I mentioned arcade cabinets. The best-selling arcade game of all time was Pac-Man.
Hmm.
And Pac-Man is something that comes to mind a lot of times when you think of video games. I think it's a game that everyone has played. Myself and Mr. Bennett used to live in a house that had a Pac-Man machine in it. Obviously, back in the day when arcades or restaurants, malls, whatever it may be, would have arcade games set up, Walmarts, um, and you would drop in your quarter and play for a little bit. Well, eventually those quarters add up. What is the total projected lifetime revenue generated from Pac-Man arcade cabinets?
Locked
One
in.
quarter at a time.
I think he knows this on the money. How much you gonna bet?
He may have looked it up, and if so, I apologize.
All right, what do you got, Bennett?
14 billion.
Ooh,
Elrod?
725 million.
Elrod, you are closest. Correct answer is 3.5 billion. Bennett went over. Bennett was really chucking some quarters out
He
there.
was.
And he's looking like he may have data that I don't, and maybe I'm wrong.
I don't know.
Either way, we'll give it to Elrod. Elrod's probably going to lose anyway.
Yeah,
Elrod,
he probably am.
would you like the first overall pick, or do you want to go second and take the
I
first
want the
pick?
first overall pick. That's the one I want. You got to go with the big gun. So I'll go first.
All right. Well,
Let's do
Elrod,
it.
take it away.
Rut, as I said, you got to go big with the first pick. You can't go small. So I've given a lot of thought on who should be the first video game chosen, and I don't think there's any debate. I trust IGN with my video game reviews, whether it's top 10, whether it's when video games come out. And across the board, IGN says that Super Mario World is the greatest video game of all time. Growing up, right, I had the first console game that I had was the Super Nintendo system. And this was the game for Super Nintendo. It sold over 20 million copies of the game worldwide. Critics across the board agree. They have 10s out of 10s from different services like Eurogamer, GameSpot had it at 8.5. Other services have it at least a 9. There's a lot of 10s. But critics also, they talk about the audio content. They talked about how complex the game is. In recent years, Mario has become more, simplified. It was a complex character in 1990. The different levels that you had, they're iconic. Bowser, you had everything with Super Mario World. It's what kickstarted Mario into the 20th century. It's what set the tone for the rest of the Mario games. It's number one. I got to go with the undisputed champion. You got to go one. You got to go with the big gun, Super Mario World.
I think it's safe to say anybody at least 90 minutes age or older has played Super Mario World.
Mm-hmm.
The Mario franchise as a whole could probably have several games represented on this list. Mr. Bennett, what would you take with your first round pick here?
I'm actually super excited for my number one picker. This is what I think is the number one game of all time. It's something that came out in 2001 for PC. It was kind of unheralded for its time, but it generated steam through word of mouth and through YouTube. It didn't have the big advertisements. It didn't have this or that. It really just came to popularity just by people saying, "Hey man, check this out, check this out." And that is Minecraft. Like I said, November 2011 for PC. Now it's on pretty much any platform you can think of, including mobile. Basically, players get to explore a block 3D world. This game is so great because it allows for a ton of freedom. You can do whatever you want. There's no objective. There's no right way to play, no wrong way to play. It's virtually infinite. If you wanted to, you could make every scene from Forrest Gump if you wanted to. And you could play out the scenes. We never really had a Forrest Gump video game, so you could get on Minecraft and make you a Forrest Gump. Minecraft is the best selling video game of all time. It sold 200 million copies and has a whopping 126 million monthly active users as of 2020. It's been called the best video game of the first 2 decades of the 21st century, and it's also been called the most important game of the decade. And it was inducted into the World Video Game Hall of Fame in its inaugural year in 2015. What makes Minecraft so great is you can play it any way that you want. The way that I want to play it might not be the way that you want to play it, might not be the same way Elrod wants to play it, but we all three get something different out of it. And I think that makes that just the perfect game.
Definitely very highly regarded. Not necessarily my cup of tea. I feel like might have been a little older than what that demographic was. And let's be honest, I play mainly sports video games, and that is not one. But definitely any list you look at of greatest video games, Minecraft is on it and somewhere near the top. Both of you very good first round picks. Bennett, we're going to move into the second round. Since we are snaking this, you get the first pick of the second round. What's your second round pick?
Well, for my second round pick, I think I'm going to go back to back, number one and number two, which actually could be flip flopped if you wanted, is which one's the best between Minecraft or between Tetris. Tetris was created in 1984 by Alexei Pajitnov from Russia, and it came to the United States in 1988. What makes Tetris so great is it has the perfect combination of simplicity of the little block shapes, but it also takes a degree of intelligence and a degree of skill to do it. You'd be really hard pressed to find a game that's been more successful than Tetris has. It's available on over 65 platforms, which sets a Guinness Book of World Record for the most platforms. It has sold nearly 500 million copies. 70 million of those were physical, and nearly 500 million mobile games have been sold for this. The Game Boy version alone is the one that I remember mostly, and that one sold over 35 million units. It's the second best selling video game franchise ever, and it really goes beyond just a video game. It's inspired architecture, it's inspired music, and it's been the subject of several researches on the brain. It's actually got a name called the Tetris effect, which basically, in a nutshell, means when you play the game, you become smart or smarter. 2009 Game Informer ranked it number 3 in the top 200 games of all time, calling it ageless. Electronic Gaming Monthly's 100th issue had it first in 100 best games of all time. And in 2007, it came in second on IGN's 100 greatest video games of all time. And here's the thing about Tetris, it's enduring. You know, Tetris, it'll stand the test of time. A lot of these other games that we may talk about or may not talk about, they can kind of date themselves. But with Tetris, you know, it's never going to be outdated. People today can get just as much enjoyment out of it as people generation before them, blah, 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 blah. I think Tetris will always be around. So that makes Tetris my number 2 choice.
I feel robbed, Rod. I ain't gonna lie. I'm robbed. That was gonna be my next pick. And
it would have been a great pick. And here's the thing, like Bennett alluded to, Tetris is probably the most timeless game in the history of video games. I remember playing Tetris on the original Nintendo. I probably had the most exposure to it on my Game Boy, as Bennett mentioned. But here's the thing. I've played Tetris on my phone. When we were in high school, I sat in a particular teacher's class on the computer, and 95% of the time when I was on the newspaper staff, me and a couple other guys were playing Tetris. I bought a few. I guess it's been a couple years ago now. A box you plug into your TV that's got hundreds of uh, old arcade games on it, and one of the first things I pulled up and played, Tetris. So basically, it's followed me my entire life, my entire video game life. Tetris is definitely one of the most timeless games in history. Well, Rod, you said that was going to be your number two. Bennett took it. What's going to be your number two now?
He stole it. Stop the steal, Bennett. Stop the steal.
Sorry.
Well, since I've got the next two picks have something in common. Some of the best games of all time are just restricted on one platform, or maybe they're good on one platform and they're not good on the others. The next two that I'm going to talk about, or that I'm going to draft, are good across the platforms. So my number two pick, Rod, is going to be a game that I played on a demo on the original PlayStation, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. This was on a demo. It later got the full treatment. But Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2, it got people interested in skateboarding. It was perfect in its design. It's consistently across the board considered one of the top video games of all time. It was available on PlayStation, Nintendo 64. It later, Xbox picked it up and made a version of the second edition. It was on Game Boy Color. It took the predecessor, the original Tony Hawk, and improved the graphics, the gameplay. You got cash rewards on the game. It made skateboarding cool in the early 2000s. The Nintendo 64 was across the board considered the better version. The PlayStation version right behind it, that's the one I played it on. But consistent, IGN, all these services really consider Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 as the greatest sports video game of all time. It's not a basketball game. It's not a football game. It is a skateboarding game. And not to mention, you had the kid-friendly soundtrack from Papa Roach, Anthrax, and Rage Against the Machine. The soundtrack is what really made this game. So I'm going with Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 as my second round selection.
You know they're making a new one, right?
Yes. They're going to butcher it. I want to go into it with low expectations, but it's going to be hard to beat that original game. It really is.
Well, that wasn't the original. That was two.
But the original franchise, it's going to be hard to outdo that.
All right. Now it seems like a good time as ever. We're not doing a Facebook preview this week, but we are still going to slide in a commercial spot for the podcast. So we're going to throw to that real quick. Again, if you're watching on YouTube, this is going to be about half a second of black, and then we'll be right back. But for those of you on the podcast, we will be back right after this. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We've gotten through the first two rounds here. First round, Elrod took Super Mario World. Bennett took Minecraft. Second round, Bennett took Tetris. Elrod took Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. Round number 3, pick number 1. Elrod, what we got?
We're going with James Bond himself. We're going with GoldenEye 007. GoldenEye was so popular back in, I don't think people remember this, but in the late 1990s, GoldenEye was just, there's a craze about this game. On Nintendo 64, I did not have this console. I always went over to my friend's house just so I could play on his N64 this game right here. It is regarded as one of the greatest games of all time. It's on everybody's top 10, top 15 list. And it's on there because this was one of the great first-person shooters of all time. And it also had one of the great multiplayer additions or features. And a lot of people believe that GoldenEye paved the way for Halo and Call of Duty. Both of the developers of those games point back to how GoldenEye was a huge influence on how they developed their games. So you think of how popular the Halo series is, how popular even today Call of Duty is. it can all be traced back to GoldenEye and playing as James Bond, the Pierce Brosnan character. You have it all in this game, and it's so much fun to play, and it even stands the test of time. You can play this game on N64 today and still feel like you're playing a modern game because of how good the graphics were at the time and the storyline. And it followed the GoldenEye entry in the 007 series as far as the movies. So going with GoldenEye 007, number 3 pick.
It's all fun and games. So somebody gets the golden gun, and then you're
Yes.
Your third round pick.
My third round pick is a game that I've lost several coins to, especially in my younger days. Lost a lot of money. That was my money, probably more my parents' money. And then I got the game for Super Nintendo, and of course that set them back more money. So I've got a lot of money invested in this game, but the pleasure I got out of this game has been a lot more than the money put into it. And that's Street Fighter 2. That came out in arcade form in 91 and then came out for the Super Nintendo in 1992. Of course, it's a fighting game. It's, in my opinion, the best fighting game. I didn't go with Soul Calibur. I didn't go with Mortal Kombat. I went with Street Fighter, and I'll tell you why. This quickly became the best-selling title game since the golden age of arcade video games, which was like the 70s until the early 80s. The arcade version sold over 200,000 arcade cabinets and 15 million software units, and is estimated to have grossed over 10 billion, making it one of the top 3 highest grossing video games ever. The Super NES version that I talked about was Capcom's best-selling single software title for 2 decades. Best-selling title for 2 decades. It's called the most important and influential fighter game ever made, and it's really credited for popularizing the fighting genre. And the reason why is beforehand, a lot of the fighting games you've seen was, okay, you hit the A button, you kick, you hit the B button, you jump, or you block, or you might do a down plus A button to do some special move. But when Street Fighter 2 came out, they really put an emphasis on combos and stuff like that, and kind of really revolutionized how you played fighting games, and they were much more competitive. And another thing about the game too is the graphics for a game in 91 and 92, the way they were stylized in kind of this cartoonish form, it really pushed the boundaries of what graphics could do at that time. And even if you go back, go get on YouTube when this is over and look up Street Fighter 2 and look at the graphics for this game. They hold up today. I would still play it today. The graphics are great for it. It's also responsible for revitalizing the arcade video game in the early 90s and was the best-selling arcade video game by far. It's one of the most influential and groundbreaking fighter games. And to me, it's absolutely a top 10 of all time. And for me, I'm putting it as the number 3 on my list, just for how influential and revolutionary this game was for fighting games from there on out.
Yeah, definitely. Here's the crazy thing. When we look at the games, I'll definitely lean Street Fighter over Mortal Kombat. But I will say, Mortal Kombat absolutely destroys Street Fighter when it comes to the movies that were made about it.
That's true. I would agree with that.
Because Street Fighter had Jean-Claude Van Damme in it and still sucked. Do you know how bad a movie has to suck for Jean-Claude Van Damme to be in it and the movie to still suck? It's got to suck pretty bad.
Is that your biggest man crush you have is Jean-Claude Van Damme?
I do love me some Jean-Claude Van Damme. I don't know that he's my biggest man crush, but he's up there. You don't want to mess with the muscles from Brussels. That's a fact. Bennett, round number 4. What is your 4th round pick?
My 4th round pick shouldn't be much of a surprise to you. This is a game and a franchise that's very near and dear to my heart. I'm going with Halo Combat Evolved, which was the very first Halo that came out in November of 2001 for the Xbox. It's a first person shooter game. If nobody's ever played it, you are Master Chief. You're a Spartan. You battle aliens and basically you save humanity. This is a extremely important game because it pretty much spawned this multi-billion-dollar franchise that we know today as Halo. It made Master Chief one of the most iconic video game figures of all time, and Halo really helped Xbox in sales. The game sold alongside 50% of Xbox consoles that were being sold back at the time. The game's pretty much got flawless scores across the board for critics. Game Informer gave it a 9.5 out of 10, GameSpot 9.7 out of 10, IGN 9.7 out of 10, and Edge 10 out of 10. It's been called the most important launch game for any console ever by Edge Magazine. GameSpot said it's easily one of the best shooters ever on any platform. The game received a total of 48 awards, like Best Xbox Game, Best Shooter Game, blah, 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 blah. It's often credited as the main reason for Xbox's success. Had Halo not been such a huge hit as it was, I don't know if we have an Xbox 360. Do we have an Xbox One? Does it go towards the way of the Dreamcast, which the Dreamcast got a raw deal? That's a great console. We should have got more Dreamcast.
Agreed.
Like I said, the Halo franchise is very near and dear to my heart, and I couldn't not put it on the list just for what it means for the Xbox brand in general.
I definitely agree. I suck at Halo. Bennett can confirm this, but it is crazy how Xbox is. I think it's number 2 to PlayStation, but for the last 20 years, those have been the two when it comes to consoles. It's been PlayStations and it's been Xboxes. And
is there a more iconic sound to a game when you put in Halo on Xbox and you hear the all that start up? I mean, I'm not going to try that again. You ain't gonna do that crap again. But you know what I'm saying. And it's iconic. It doesn't get any better than that.
But you hear that music, or you hear in the very last for Halo 3, that very last mission and the music that's playing, I will run through a brick wall if that music's playing. Guaranteed.
Over the drums and everything, and I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Back to what I was saying, though. I mean, it's crazy. Like, the face of Nintendo was Mario. The face of Sega franchises was Sonic. The face of Xbox is Halo. It's Master Chief. And without Halo, like Bennett said, here in 2021, there's the new Xbox. What's it called? The new console coming out?
The One?
Is it called the One?
I think there's something after One now coming out.
There is. I can't remember what it's called. And people,
maybe Xbox 2.
It's not 2 because that would have been the one that made sense. But Xbox maybe is not as successful. Xbox 360 is maybe not a thing, like Bennett said. Xbox One maybe not a thing. This new console maybe not a thing if not for Halo. So I definitely think that's a good pick. Elrod, your 4th round pick.
All right. I'm gonna blow your mind. I'm gonna pick a football game that's not NCAA or Madden. The best football game of all time for any console is undisputed, and it's ESPN's version of 2K5. It's the 2005 edition. It's NFL 2K5. And here's the thing: Madden has had no competition for 14 years, and the quality of the product has been going down. During the last good Madden is considered. Last great Madden, I should say, it's the 2005 edition when they had some competition. When they had 2K5. 2K5 is renowned for multiple reasons. The first of which is they had the halftime show, and it was a full-length halftime show. You had a post-game show, and you also could watch highlights from other games where the computer was playing it during the season. And it brought these games into the 21st century. Across the board, IGN said that this was the best football game to date, and it was also on the cover of the game. Consistently, they got 9.3s, 9.4s. Madden for this year had really good reviews. Madden had a 9.5, and that's the highest score that they've had in 15 years. Of course, after the success of this game, Electronic Arts got smart, got exclusive rights, and there hasn't been a game like this that has competed with Madden in a given year since this title. I love this game. This is a game that critics talk about. You could pop this game just like the GoldenEye game. You can pop NFL 2K5 into a console today, and it be just as fun. Maybe the graphics are not as good as a game today, but the gameplay is superb, and it still holds up even today.
I'm going to try to be unbiased and look at things from beyond just my perspective here. Because here's the thing, when you look at it, yes, the reviews for those NFL 2K games were great. I agree with the presentation of the post-game show and the halftime show and all that were great. Personally, I absolutely hated the NFL 2K franchises.
Oh,
Gameplay was awful. The presentation was good. The gameplay was awful. Granted, I am a blindly loyal Madden guy since like Madden 94.
cheap.
Back when they had Madden, literally had Madden and Summerall on the game. Those were the golden days. But I will say though, I'm looking at this. I'm going to look at these lists from a perspective that neither one of you know I'm going to look at it from tonight. But my personal opinion, I was not a fan of the NFL 2K franchises. But that's just me. All right, Elrod.
All right.
Fifth and final round. I just want to recap here. Your team thus far is Super Mario World,
Mm-hmm.
Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2,
Uh-huh.
GoldenEye 007,
Uh-huh.
NFL 2K5.
Yep.
What will be your fifth and final pick?
Well, my fifth and final pick tonight, Rod, is going to be most of my games have been family friendly. GoldenEye, maybe not so much. But we're going to go a little bit violent here. We're going to go into the dark world of Grand Theft Auto. And when you talk about a great game, all of the Grand Theft Autos are considered good. You can make an argument that a lot of people believes that 4 is better than 5. But the majority of people can consider Grand Theft Auto 5 the superior entry in that franchise. And this game came out in 2013. And it's still the main game being played today with that franchise. It's holding up after 8 years. It's sold over 135 million copies worldwide. It's made over $6 billion in revenue since its initial release. It's consistent across the board, a top Xbox game of all time and a top PlayStation game of all time. Multiple computer and video games magazine ranked it a top game. This game is violent and it's truly not for children, but the gameplay where you basically the free mode where you can go around the city of Los Angeles and do whatever you want to, mostly bad stuff. If you played the games before, you're free to in your online the online game version that you have, you can interact with people, you can shoot them, you can team up on missions. It's really cool how you can play with anybody in the world. And this game has been highly successful, but the best entry in that franchise is Grand Theft Auto 5, and it rounds out my top 5.
All right, Bennett, let me recap your team thus far. You've got Minecraft, Tetris, Street Fighter 2, Halo. What's your fifth and final pick?
My fifth and final pick is one that I have the music for it already stuck in my head. It's a game that I remember I started playing in like 6th, 7th grade, and I played hours and hours and hours of this game. It even had like a little log that would tell you like how many hours you spent on this game, and it was well into the hundreds of hours that I've spent on this game. It's a game that came out for Game Boy and Game Boy Color. I think Game Boy Color, definitely Game Boy, and that's Pokemon Red slash Pokemon Blue.
Mm.
Like I said, it came out for Game Boy in September of 1998. It's a role-playing video game. You play as this little character who goes out and you catch Pokemon and you fight your Pokemon, and you're supposed to become the champion of Indigo League. This game here marked the beginning of a multi-billion-dollar franchise. It sold around 31 million copies worldwide. It holds the Guinness Book World Records for the best-selling RPG on the Game Boy and the best-selling RPG of all time. GamePro gave it a 4.5 out of 5, GameSpot a 8.8 out of 10, IGN a perfect 10 out of 10. It became the fastest-selling Game Boy title in the United States and is the best-selling title in Japan. Nintendo Magazine named Pokemon as one of the best Nintendo games of all time, and the Pokemon video game series as a whole has sold more than 300 million units, and all of that is accredited to these first two, which was Pokemon Red, Pokemon Blue. A lot of good memories of playing this game. I couldn't not have it on the list. So number 5 for me is Pokemon Red, Pokemon Blue.
All right, gentlemen, I cannot stress to you how important closing arguments are going to be. Now, Elrod, you won at the beginning of the show and chose the first pick. I should have laid it out earlier that whoever takes first pick has to go first in closing arguments, but I didn't. So what I'm going to do is give you a choice. Do you want to go first in closing arguments? Or do you want to go second?
I'm going to go first.
Elrod is going first. I cannot stress to you how important your closing argument is.
I think I made setup here.
Tell me why your collection of Super Mario World, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, GoldenEye 007, NFL 2K5, and Grand Theft Auto 5. Tell me why your list is the best.
Right. I'm going to keep it short and sweet. Listen, I love Tetris. Tetris, I'm not that good at it. I suck at it. I've never got past the 5th level. I'm the world's biggest Halo fan. But when you look at my list here, when you want to look at quality, when you want to look at stuff from the top down, I've got Mario. I've got the best Mario game of all time. I've got arguably the best sports game of all time in Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. The best N64 game of all time, there's no question. It's GoldenEye 007. I know you don't like the 2K franchise, but ESPN's 2K5 NFL is beloved. It's got a cult following even today. A lot of people think it's the best sports game of all time. Majority of people think it's Tony Hawk, so I've got that on there. I've got Grand Theft Auto 5. So when you look at it, I've got variety, I've got quality, I've got family games, I've got adult games, and I've got games that everybody can enjoy. And I've got Papa Roach, right? I've got Papa Roach on Tony Hawk's game. I've got Rage Against the Machine. I've got a great soundtrack. I've got it all. I've got value here. I've got great games across the board. Forget about it.
Bennett, Minecraft, Tetris, Street Fighter 2, Halo, and Pokemon Red/Blue. Why is your list, your collection of games, the best on this list?
Okay, yeah, start with Minecraft. Like I said, best-selling game of all time. There's 126 million people playing this game every month, and it's often credited as the number 1 game on many of the critics polls. Number 2, I've got Tetris. Who hasn't played Tetris? Who doesn't enjoy playing Tetris? It's a game that anybody can enjoy. Maybe not everybody's good at it, but you can enjoy it. It's an enduring game. Like I said, you have the Tetris effect where you're actually making yourself smarter as you play the game. And this is actually a game that I know a lot about because you're fitting tile into the screen and I work at a tile place, so it's like meant to be for me. Number three, I got Street Fighter. Um, so this game was very influential for the fighting genre. It's very revolutionary for the fighting genre. It's one of the top three highest grossing games of all time when you take in consideration the arcade form and the actual home versions you can get. I think some of those, I forgot how many millions or billions of dollars it was. Some of that was mine for sure. I spent a lot of money on Street Fighter. Halo, pretty much saved Xbox's butt. Master Chief's the face of Xbox. And one thing I didn't really talk about is how the first Halo was kind of the pioneer of the shooting games. You couldn't necessarily go online back then, but if you remember, you could link up and you could have a TV in one room with four people playing, and a TV in another room, and that really kind of started all of that to where then this was a huge thing. Then it became more of a thing where you could do it online from anybody across the world. So it was kind of on the forefront of all that. And last was Pokemon. Like I said, this spawned the huge Pokemon franchise. And this one is actually a huge, huge hit, not only in the United States, but also in Japan. So I've got a game that was huge on two different countries. I feel like I've well represented various platforms: Minecraft, PC game, Tetris, 65 different platforms, Street Fighter, Super Nintendo, Halo, Xbox, Pokemon, Game Boy. I've got a mix of very influential games, some revolutionary games, some iconic games, and I've also got a mix in of some of my personal favorite games that I enjoyed um, playing as a kid, and even today some too when I have time, which is very little. But so yeah, so that's my list.
Oh, guys, I didn't tell either of these two gentlemen what I had done. Because here's the thing: if you're sitting in this mediator role, especially for a draft, you, it's opinion. It's all opinion. Half of you listening out there may say there's no doubt Elrod has the best list. The other half says there's no doubt Bennett has the best list. So I tried my best to throw my opinion, keep it in there, but weight it very, very low. And you guys have made that not possible because what I've done, I've compiled 5 lists myself of video games with looking at different aspects of video games. And I thought if one of these guys can outpoint the other by 3 or 4 points, then okay, that person's going to win. You guys are separated by 1 point. Hence why I said your closing argument is very, very crucial. And here's my 5 lists I compiled that I'm weighing in on this. I looked at the top selling games of all time. What games have sold the most? And Bennett took the top 2 with Tetris and Minecraft. Elrod took the third with Grand Theft Auto 5. 4 and 5 on that list, neither of you took, but Wii Sports and Player Unknown's Battlegrounds. Those are your top 5 selling games of all time. So Bennett took the top 2, Elrod took number 3. Then I looked over, I think probably the lead source when it comes to video games is IGN. And I looked at IGN's greatest games of all time. And apparently Elrod did too, because Elrod's number 1 pick was the number 1 on their list, which was Super Mario World. The rest of the list, neither of you took, and that's fine. I probably wouldn't have taken them either. But just so the listeners know, Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, Portal 2, Super Metroid, Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. Neither of you took any of those, but that was the rest of that list. The next list I have is from Business Insider. Their top rated games rated by professional video game critics. Number one on that list was another Legend of Zelda game, Ocarina of Time. I'm not a Zelda guy. I know it was a big deal. I was never a Zelda guy. Number two on that list, Elrod took with Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. Rounding out that list was Grand Theft Auto 4, Soul Calibur, and Super Mario Galaxy. The fourth list that I used to calculate was, what do I always go to when we're looking at stuff? I go to Ranker. I want to know what the people think. The people think the best video game of all time is The Witcher Wild Hunt. Neither one of you had that. To be completely honest, I've barely even heard of it.
And that's the reason why Ranker should not be given any weight, because of that very reason right there.
Sure it does. Sure it should get weight. Number two on Ranker, Pokemon Red, a Bennett choice. Number three on Ranker, Minecraft, a Bennett choice. Number four on Ranker, Grand Theft Auto 5, an Elrod choice. And number five on Ranker was Red Dead Redemption, which neither of you said. So those are four of my five lists. And the fifth list was Rut's list of non-sports games,
which is not very long.
And I narrowed it down. I tried to do a top five. I couldn't. I made a top six because one of them's kind of a sports game. And I am very disappointed in both of you because one on this list was taken. One. And that was, these are in no particular order, but the one that was taken, Elrod took GoldenEye 007, was on my list. The rest of my list that neither one of you took, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. That was a big one. That was kind of started the Call of Duty. Call of Duty was around a while before it really caught fire. And I feel like this is the title that brought fire. Neither of you took it. The original PC phenomenon, Doom, which was a fantastic game and may be the father of first-person shooter games. And neither of you took it.
I thought you were going to say Oregon Trail.
Oregon Trail was on my list and it got cut out. Mario Kart, surprisingly, nobody said.
I couldn't put two Mario games on my list.
That's fair. That's fair. Contra, my favorite Nintendo game ever.
What? I'm just kidding. Gosh.
Contra's the greatest Nintendo game ever with Duck Hunt. Come on. But neither of you said that. And then the one that's kind of a sports game that went in there, WCW NWO Revenge, maybe the greatest wrestling game ever made. And I put it on my list because there are people that didn't watch wrestling, didn't care about wrestling, played the crap out of this game. As far as gameplay goes, maybe the best wrestling video game of all time. But again, you all didn't pick my games. But when you look at those lists, you look what y'all took. Elrod had a score of 5. Bennett has a score of 4. If I'm giving out individual awards, I think the two biggest hitters as far as iconic of all time, I think each of you picked one. I think Super Mario World is one of those that's iconic of all time. I think Tetris is one of those that are iconic of all time. My steal of the draft is Halo in the 4th round, just because of everything it meant for the Xbox franchise. If you gave me both of your lists of these 10 games and said, Rut, pick one to go play, I'm playing GoldenEye 007. It was on my list of favorite games. After all that, as I handed out those awards, those are split 2 and 2. So it's going to come down to my opinion. And I tell you, listener, you may think I'm absolutely wrong, and that's fine. You may think I'm absolutely right, and that's even better than fine. But I picked the winner on this episode. So I'm going to give you all my analysis and why I went with what I went with. When I look where the points fall on my list of lists here, Elrod outscored Bennett on what IGN called the greatest. Elrod outscored Bennett on what Business Insider, what the critics called the top rated games. Elrod had one each on those lists. Bennett had none. Elrod took more of the critical side. Top selling, Bennett had two, the top two. Elrod had number 3. Ranker, what the fans like, Bennett had 2. Elrod had 1. So basically, do I go with what the critics think is the best?
Oh God, here we go. The steal.
Which would be Elrod's, or do I go with what the people have shown they like, which would be Bennett's? Ultimately, it comes down to this. This is what this whole thing hinges on. Because again, I consider that a wash. It's a tie. Here's what I break it down to. Of Bennett's 5 games, I would play 4 of them. I probably wouldn't play Minecraft. It was never my thing. Tetris, Street Fighter 2, Halo, Pokemon, I'd play those. Of Elrod's list, I would play 4 of them. Super Mario World, Tony Hawk, GoldenEye, Grand Theft Auto. I'm in. It comes down to Minecraft versus NFL 2K5. And I know that Minecraft is one of the most popular video games ever. And to this day, I hate the NFL 2K gameplay. So based on that pick alone, I'm giving this to Bennett.
Steal. This is rigged. This is a rigged draft.
It's not a rigged draft.
Rigged draft.
That might be one of the closest we've ever had.
It's pretty close. Elrod, you let Halo slip to 4. You didn't take GoldenEye to 3. And you put in
GoldenEye in the third round is a better steal than Halo in 4.
I disagree, but and don't get me wrong, I suck at both these games, but don't get me wrong, I like GoldenEye a whole lot better than I like Halo. But what Halo did for Xbox, GoldenEye didn't do that for 64. It did a lot for 64, but it didn't do that. So Bennett, congratulations. Half of our listeners hate me. I don't care. Not for this reason. But Bennett, tonight, you have convinced me that you have drafted the better list of video games. Do you have a
yeah, it's really, really, really hard to just narrow it down just to 5. I had a really hard time, just picking 5. I would flip back and forth. I'd say, well, I'm going to put this at the number 4. Well, I'm going to put this at number 5. I'm going to put this at number 3. I want to give just a real quick couple of honorable mentions. Pac-Man for the arcade, huge game. The little Pac-Man thing is supposedly the most recognized video game character of all of them, is what they say. Grand Theft Auto 3, for everything that it did, it was on the forefront of all the other Grand Theft Auto games as far as like open world type games. And Guitar Hero, just for how unique Guitar Hero was. Guitar Hero let all of us pretty much be rock stars. You kind of broke free from the handheld controller. You got the guitar. I thought that was very, very, very creative, and it was a huge, huge mega hit. Really, there's really no. I mean, it's cliche to say no winner and loser because it's subjective. And like I said, we could have done a top 10 and still had a hard time figuring out what our top 10 were. So yeah. This was a really, really good episode. And if anybody out there has made a Forrest Gump scene, screenshot it and send the picture to our Facebook or our Instagram or what else we on, Twitter, the YouTubes, all of it.
Let us see it. Let us see it. I'm disappointed nobody said Duck Hunt. I gotta say. That was really the first game that got you away from the actual controller. There was no Duck Hunt.
5 is hard. 5 games is hard to do.
It is. Tough.
There was no Ninja Turtles game, which was also a fantastic game. Another underrated game was the Power Rangers game on Sega. Sega is really, really not represented in either one of your lists, and that's kind of disappointing.
Yeah.
For what it's worth, Sonic the Hedgehog was on my top 12 for what it's worth. About that Power Rangers game. Do you know how many times I had to call the what was the video store in
Video time?
Carthage, which I don't know what, maybe it was Carthage Video. I don't know. I'd call them. Do you have the Power Rangers game? No, it's out. Do you have the Power Rangers game? No, it's being rented. Do you have the Power Rangers game? No. Called one time. I said, do you have the Power Rangers game? Yes, it's available. I was like, we got to
Reserve it. Reserve it.
And I freaking got it. I had it for the whole weekend.
Those were the days.
Yeah.
Children today will never, and people in general will never understand what it was like to be the anxiety that we had to go through on the DVD, that the new one that was coming out, or a video game. The anxiety that we had to go get that game.
And
We had to reserve.
we
You know
grew
what
up.
kids got on? Go ahead, Red.
I was going to say, we grew up in a small town, so it wasn't like a Blockbuster. It wasn't a go in. You went in, and the box is sitting there. But does it have that little ticket in it that you go to get the game? That was the
Mhm.
nerve-wracking thing. Does it have the little ticket there? And the crushing feeling when you've got your heart set on one particular game and it's not there, and you have to end up settling for like Crash Bandicoot or something, it was disappointing.
That's
Those
exactly
were
what
the
I was going to
days.
say. When you drive by the video store and you convince your parents to pull in, they say, "I'm not going in." You go in there and you've got 5 minutes to get in and get out, and you're like, "Okay, I know what I want." You go in there and you're like, "Okay, here's the where's the ticket?" Then you pick the game up. You look around. You look on the floor. Did somebody drop the ticket? Is somebody trying to be cute and putting the ticket behind another one? I've looked at that, and then I'm like, "Crap, this is not what I want." So then you spend 45 minutes in there trying to find another game that you want, and then your parents come in and they pull you out, and you don't get any game because you took too long. That's
Those were
what
the
we had to
days.
deal with.
Those were the days.
Now you can get on like PlayStation Store and download a game and never leave your house.
Oh, it's fun.
That's not as fun. Like you had to have the timing right.
Oh me. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that will do it for episode 39 of Convince Me. We will be back next week, hopefully on time, for episode 40. And episode 40 will be a big episode. We will be covering, we don't know yet. But we'll let you guys know when we figure that out. I'm sure it'll be something good. Guys, we're 39 episodes. We're almost to a year of doing this. That's
We got to do something big. We got to have a blowout for the 1 year show.
That'll be great. And I think we might have missed a couple weeks. I could be wrong. I know we missed at least one. It might work out to where episode 50 is also the 1 year anniversary. And if that is the case, 50 is a pretty good milestone. 1 year anniversary is a pretty good milestone. We may have to do something real big for that if that happens to fall. I haven't looked at the dates. We don't look ahead and plan real far ahead on the show, as we probably should. And again, we apologize that this show's coming to you a day late. We hope it was good enough to make up for it. If not, come back next week. We'll do better. But for Mr. Bennett, for Mr. Elrod, I am Rut. I have spoken. Bennett has convinced me, and I hope we've convinced you to come back next week. And until then, peace.